Hey my good friend, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. This summer I test drove both the Subaru Outback wagon as well as the all-new 2017 Golf Alltrack wagon, two super off-road wagons that both made my buy it list. I liked them very much. But these two cars, more than any other this summer, you've been asking for a comparison, a face-to-face, a face-off. So that's what we've done here. We've got both test drives put together in the same video so you can see how they stack up face-to-face. The Outback, as we know, it was redesigned for the 2015 model year. Therefore, there's not a lot new to talk about here in terms of styling, but there are a few features I want to point out. The obvious is the fact that we're in an Outback here, so we've got the lower cladding down here and the skid plate treatment visually that give it a more off-roady look. As we come around the side here, I want to point out the fact that we've got 18-inch alloy wheels here on the limited trim grade. It's nice that they haven't gone larger like a lot of crossovers and SUVs have, because that still gives you a nice tall sidewall for a better ride when you're out actually going off-road. It's just something that we've seen with a lot of crossovers. You get 19, 20, even 22-inch wheels. You really can't take them off-road for a comfortable ride. It just sort of, it's made for the street. Now this does have a few visual things here. We've got this roof rack up here that gives it about a 3 to 4 inch taller look in silhouette, when in reality that roof really ends here. It's a nice look, but it's also very functional because it's a real roof rack that you can actually strap a lot of accessories to. Out back here on the Outback, it's a pretty familiar look, just like up front. You've got the built-in spoiler here with the third row brake light up there, and just like from the side view, those roof rails up there really do give this a more bulky SUV look, even though it is just a wagon. Lower fascia down here, you've got the rugged black plastic look, and this one here actually has the power liftgate here. Now you can open this in a number of ways. You got a button inside, there's a button right here on the bottom of it for closing it, and you've got the key fob. Now it doesn't have the motion activation like some vehicles do, but what it does have is a height adjustment. You can adjust the height at which it stops, so when you go to press that button to shut it, if you're a shorter person, you don't have to reach up so high, or if you're taller, you can adjust it to open all the way so that you don't bump your head on it all the time. That's a pretty nice feature, I think. Right up front here, this has a lot of styling elements that really set it apart from the Golf Sport Wagon. Different grille, a completely different lower front fascia that has sort of a skid plate element down there in addition to black plastic cladding. Fog lights are standard on this vehicle. Also standard are halogen headlights. You can get a lighting package that has the bi-xenon headlights and LED daytime running lights, but that is an extra package. Wheels on this one, these are 18-inch alloys. Now if you get into the lower trim grades, you get a 17-inch alloy wheel, which I do suspect probably has a little bit better of a capability for off-roading, a little bit more protection for that wheel with a higher sidewall. The 18s here, very nice looking wheel, but honestly a little bit more tailored for on-pavement use. Coming down the side here, one big difference, again, down below is that lower cladding, lots of cladding, and you've also got a nice metallic trim piece that gives it a nice upscale look. Up here on top, standard roof rails, and I'm sure your Volkswagen dealer will help you with lots of different accessories for you to attach your toys to this thing with. Out here at the back of the Alltrack, one big difference you'll see is down here on the lower fascia. You've got dual exhaust tips, and you've got that skid plate sort of styling treatment down there, which I think really looks pretty neat here. Also, another thing I always like to point out with Volkswagens, this has the trademark logo you pull with your fingers to open up that rear hatch. Now you might have noticed here, this does not have a power opener like some vehicles in class. Not a real big deal because this is still a car, not so much a big SUV with a big heavy gate. The interior of the Outback is very much like a sedan or a car because, well, that's what this is. It's not really a true SUV that's really large and tall. This is a car that's lifted up, so it feels like you're sitting in a car, but the seat does have enough adjustment range where you can lift it up and give yourself that SUV-like look out, because you do have a little bit of extra height with the suspension height that's here, so you still get that SUV-ness as far as the commanding view, but as far as sitting here, it feels like a car. And what they've done with the design is very tasteful, I think. I like the dark black in here. This comes with lighter colors, but the dark black with this sort of a satin finish wood grain. Really looks good. It is faux wood, but it's very well done faux wood. And the quality of the materials in here is very good, I think. It's really sort of mid-grade. It's not the kind of stuff you're going to find in Audi, but it doesn't have a lot of cheap chintzy things that you find in some of the mid-grade competitors out there. This does have everything that you can get, with a few exceptions. The new touring model does offer a little bit more trim inside. Soft trim on the doors. The steering wheel is leather wrapped, and on the steering wheel are a lot of controls. You got infotainment controls, you've got driver safety assistance controls, as well as paddle shifters here. Paddle shifters for the continuously variable transmission. And they actually feel of reasonable quality. They're not made of metal, but they're not cheap chintzy plastic like you do find in some of the competitors. It is tilt and telescoping, but it's manually adjustable. Now these seats, this is a 10-way power seat in the Limited. Over here you have a 4-way power seat for the passenger. Very comfortable. They're firm seats and they're very supportive, but not so firm that they're hard. They really have a nice support level, especially from side to side. And I'm about 170 pounds, and there's plenty of room here where I could be a bigger person and still find lots of comfort. The center stack is very simply laid out. You've got the infotainment system up here, and then you've got HVAC down below it. Down here, you've got a really nice area for your phone. A big phone can fit in there, and you've got the auxiliary and USB ports in addition to a 12-volt port down there, so there's a lot of room for devices. You've got really nice cup holders here, and down here just behind the shifter are the controls for the hill descent control, as well as the X mode all-wheel drive. Sitting back here in the back seat, like I was saying up front, very much like sitting in a sedan or a car, because that's what this is based on. Legroom, as you can see, very, very good. These seats about halfway forward, halfway back. Got plenty of room here. Headroom pretty good too, even though there's a sunroof that sometimes does take up a little bit of space. Now there are some good amenities back here. We are in the Limited, so there's vents back here for HVAC. There's heated seats. That's always a nice thing. One thing I'm surprised I don't see back here, there's no power ports or USB ports just yet. I assume Subaru's probably going to add that at some point. There is a center fold-down armrest here that does have cup holders in it, and these seat backs do adjust for rake, so that's nice. Now this doesn't slide. Not so necessary here because we don't have a third row. Now the cool thing is, these seats, of course, as you'd expect, do fold down in a 60-40 split. There's levers back there that you can pull that actually allows you to lay those down. Now the cargo area back here, very large, because this isn't a crossover SUV that's a little bit shorter. It's a full-length wagon, so you've got a nice big deck back there that allows you to put some pretty big things in there without even folding these seats down. But once you do, you've even got a larger area with a reasonably flat load floor. Now underneath that, there's a spare tire as well. Always a good thing with a crossover or an SUV. Anything that's marketed to us as something to take out into the wild, because a lot of cars now have that can of Fix-A-Flat and an inflator that isn't going to help you if you cut a tire open on a rock. If you watch my other videos where I've reviewed the Volkswagen Golf as well as the Sport Wagon, you know that I really do like this interior. It's very German, very businesslike. It doesn't have a lot of strange and artistic design innovations that really try to impress you here. No, this is a place to work. It's a place to live, and everything's laid out in a very functional and German way. Now, one thing that does differentiate this from the standard Sport Wagon is finishes. Here on the center stack as well as the dash applique is a metallic charcoal finish, not the piano black, and I like that better actually because it doesn't show the dust and the dirt nearly as much, as well as the fingerprints. Also over here on the door panels and on the front of the dash, you've got sort of a carbon fiber-ish aluminum pattern sort of finish that it's very pleasing to the eye. I think I like it, and it is unique to this car. Now sitting here, these seats are very comfortable. These are Volkswagen Sport seats, always liked them. Here they're trimmed in VTEX, which is vinyl. It's not leather, and unfortunately Volkswagen does not offer leather in this model, at least not yet. The good news is it's available in a variety of colors. You can get a really rich brown color as well as tan, and in certain models you can also get a two-tone combination of gray and black. Now sitting here, the driving position very much identical to the Sport Wagon or any other Golf. You do notice that the car is sitting up slightly higher, so you have a little bit more of a commanding view out there. Tilt and telescoping steering wheel that really allows you to get a nice view both of your instruments as well as get a nice comfortable spot. Now we don't have memory seats here, but not really in this price class something you'd expect. When it comes to storage, there's a nice big area down here for your phone. It does close, and I've got a pretty good sized phone, and it does fit all the way down in here, and you can close that if you don't want to look at it. There are ports down here for all the things you need to plug your phone in, including that USB port. Down here, cup holders. There is storage in here, but not a really large space. The good news is down here in the doors, large map pockets where you can put a lot of stuff, 2 or 3 bottles of water in addition to a few other things. Back here in the back seat, you're sitting in the back of a Golf Sport Wagon. It's a car, therefore not like a lot of SUVs where I really tend to talk about the fact that you've got a low seating position. You do have one here. It's because you're in a car. You don't have that really high, tall SUV-like feel. But the good news is that there's plenty of room back here. I'm about 5'9". These front seats are set right in the middle because they're set for me up front. Therefore, I've got plenty of space. Now, if your front passenger here was a little bit larger and came back, I've got a little bit of room to spare here. And if they were shorter wide, there'd be even more room back here. Now, headroom, very good because well, we've got this big, huge piece of glass up here that actually, sometimes sunroofs take some headroom out, but this one actually sort of really opens the space up and makes it nice and bright. It's comfortable back here. That's the big takeaway. It's the fact that these seats have a lot of bolstering, so you do sit down in them and they sort of hold you in place. There is space for a third passenger here in the middle, but they're going to sit up a little bit higher and be a little bit, well, less held. One amenity back here that's very near and dear to my heart is the rear HVAC vents. Here in Arizona, when it's hot in the summer, it's always something I look for whenever I'm stuck in the back of someone else's car. There's also a fold-down armrest right here with cup holders in it. What's not back here are heated seats. Again, this class doesn't necessarily put those back here at this price range, so not necessarily something I call missing. Now in the back, because we're in the wagon, there's a lot of storage back here behind this seat. There's a lot of space back there. And the best part about it, of course, is you can fold these seats down. They do fold down in a 60-40 split, but in addition to that, that center armrest does have a door that allows you to have a pass-through if you still have passengers on both sides. So if you got skis or other long things, it really does make it convenient. It's an extra added feature. Now when these seats are down, you have an almost flat load floor. And the best part is underneath the rear load floor, you do have a temporary spare tire. And in the center there, you can see the Fender subwoofer for the audio system. But note the fact that there's actually quite a bit of space in there that you can actually store a lot of other things underneath that load floor. What's under the hood here is something that sets Subaru apart from virtually every other automaker known to man, except for Porsche, and that is the Boxer engine, horizontally opposed 4-cylinder. This one, 2.5 liters with 175 horsepower and 174 pound-feet of torque. Here, mated to a continuously variable transmission, or CVT. It's rated here at 25 mpg city, 32 mpg highway, and 28 mpg combined. And a big crossover. So I always ask the question, how does it go? Well, it's a 4-cylinder engine in a pretty big car, so we're not talking sports car territory here when it comes to power delivery, but it's very refined for being a 4-cylinder that's working pretty hard, I think. And this continuously variable transmission actually has some nice features to it. It has a manual mode here, which allows you sort of get the feeling that you're, well, in a real transmission. And it gives you shift points that you can use these paddle shifters for, which is pretty neat. Not all CVTs give you that, and it actually works pretty convincingly. Look at that. Now, it does still sort of act a little strange for a regular transmission. You can still tell you got a CVT here. But if you're out on a back road, you want to sort of have a little bit of fun, it's going to let you do it. Or even more important, if you're off-roading and you want to make sure you can be in the right gear ratio for what you're doing, you can have that control. So I'm pretty pleased with this. And that doesn't come out of my mouth very often for anything with a continuously variable transmission. Fuel economy is really what I was curious about with this because it's rated at 28 mpg combined. That's for an all-wheel drive crossover SUV-ish type vehicle. That's pretty good. Now yes, you do trade off a little bit with horsepower, but let's be honest, the flat six really doesn't have that much more horsepower. It's around 250, 256, not competitive at all for a 6-cylinder engine. So my argument before was, why not look at the 4-cylinder? At least you get the fuel economy. Well, fuel economy is what I got here. It's rated at 28 mpg. I got 29 during my week with it, 29 and a half to be exact, but I usually round it down, 29 mpg. What's under the hood of the Alltrack is the single and only engine available. That's a 1.8-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine with direct fuel injection. Here it has 170 horsepower and 199 pound-feet of torque. And in my tester here, it's mated to a DSG 6-speed automatic transmission. A 6-speed manual will be available a little bit later next year. So how does it go? Woo! All right. Now, big difference between this and the Golf Sport Wagon. This has the 6-speed DSG robotic manual automatic transmission. Now, I know that sounds like an oxymoron. If you're not familiar with transmissions, this is essentially, mechanically speaking, a manual transmission where the computer does the shifting for you. It has a regular clutch, just like most manual transmissions. Therefore, when it shifts, it feels like one. And that really comes into play when you put it over in the manual shift gate or you use the paddle shifters. You get much stiffer shifts, much crisper shifts that are a little bit more sporty than you might get with a little bit softer feel that you get from the automatic. So that's a really big plus here in the Alltrack. I do like this engine quite a bit, even though I'm more of a TDI diesel guy. This being the only engine available in this car isn't a penalty at all. It's got plenty of power when you ask for it, and it's got a nice sound to it. Very little turbo lag. So if you like the sporting feel of a car like this, you can have power pretty much whenever you ask for it. Now, fuel economy, now I said I like diesels, it's because the fuel economy, and you still get the power here. This is rated by the EPA at 25 mpg combined. In my week with it, I got 29, and that was a pretty good mixture of highway as well as around town driving. So I didn't really even try that hard, and the air conditioner's been on because even though it's November here in Phoenix, the air conditioner is still on because it's still 80 some degrees out there more often than not. On the topic of handling, this rides and drives very much like the car it's based on. It's got a nice, quiet, stable, solid ride. It's sprung pretty stiffly, I'd say, but not so stiff that it rides rough, which means it's pretty sharp when it comes to throwing it into a curve. Fully independent front suspension, fully independent rear suspension, no twist beams or anything like that. And when they redesigned this car in 2015, they did a lot of quiet tuning that actually pays off for road noise. Insulated front windshield, a lot of sound deadening, and the wind noise is pretty low too. Putting it into a curve works pretty well. Even though it does have electric power steering, it's still pretty sharp in overall feel. My first blush with this is that it feels very much like the Golf Sport Wagon. This does have an extra bit of ride height that's actually not quite 1 inch, it's 0.6 inches according to the specs. So they've given it that extra ride height that it's going to need for being able to take it out off-road into a little bit more rough territory, but they haven't made it so tall that it really affects the on-road handling. The ride identical to the Sport Wagon, and here, because we're on the SEL, I have the larger 18-inch alloy wheels, so that does give me a little bit more of a road holding feel as I lay it into the curves. So if you like the German car feel when it comes to handling and driving, this still has that. It hasn't gotten soft and tippy like an SUV in any way whatsoever. And of course, it's a very quiet ride in here. These tires don't make a lot of noise, a lot of sound deadening down in the floor as well as everywhere else in the vehicle. And there's not a lot of wind noise from that panoramic sunroof. So we're all good here, at least on the pavement. Okay. We're gonna do something right here, my mogul test. What this is, it's a mogul here where I get one front wheel off the ground and one of the rear wheels either off the ground or with very little traction. It's a test that not all SUVs that are really good at four-wheel driving and off-roading, they can't all achieve this, especially most of the crossover mid-size SUVs that this competes against. But this has the X mode here, which really dials up the symmetrical all-wheel drive system for maximum traction articulation. It can torque vector to single wheels as you go. So this is a good way to see how that really works. Now, I've also got the hill start assist and the hill descent control on, which should keep us from rolling back downhill when I take my foot off the throttle. So here we go. I'm just going to drive up here nice and slow, get into position here. My front wheel's dipping down. All right. So right now my front wheel over there is up in the air. You can see us kind of teeter-tottering here. My rear wheel back here, very little traction. So in a lot of vehicles we'd be stuck. So I'm just going to lay on the throttle nice and easy. Look at that. Now I've got this in off-road mode, which is a distinct mode that comes with this, and it offers a number of different changes to the traction control system, as well as it offers hill descent. But as you can see here on the screen, it also has different meters that give you sort of off-road metrics. Now I'm going to pull up here really slowly, and because this is a car, not an SUV, I can't quite drive into this thing as steeply as I normally do, because I'd be getting into that front fascia down there. So we're getting up here. All right, now that front wheel over there is literally hanging off the ground. The back wheel over here behind me, very little traction, and it's just kind of wanting to spin there. So I'm sitting here kind of stuck. Now I'm going to lay on the throttle nice and easy, and it does it no problem. It was able to direct traction to those wheels that had it and stop the spinning wheels that didn't. Very good. The mogul test was fun. Now, this is really the big leveler when it comes to any crossover or off-road vehicle, and that is the desert washboard road, because out here at speed, it doesn't matter whether it's a Range Rover or a Wrangler. This surface out here, even though it isn't really rough off-roading, can make some of the best off-road vehicles feel like a pile. And so what I'm finding out here is that this car is freaking amazing out here. I'm not getting any rattling or shuddering in the structure, no rattling in the suspension or the steering. I'm getting a little bit of dash and trim rattle when I really hit the rough stuff, but this thing's holding together as solid as you'd expect most big SUVs and crossovers to. It's just downright fun out here. You can just blow and go out here like you could in a Jeep Wrangler almost. Amazing. Because we've got these 18-inch wheels with low-profile tires, the ride is a little bit harsh when you get over some of the rougher stuff. If you had a lower trim grade with the 17-inch wheels, might be a little bit softer. But when it comes to how well it handles out here, how well the traction goes down, it's very good. I'm not getting any rattling or shaking in the suspension or any kind of shuddering in the steering, which does happen with SUVs out there. So the good news is that even though this is riding pretty stiff, it has a nice solid tight feel. Now I am getting just a little bit of rattling, I think coming from that panoramic roof up there, which is a common trait, but for the most part this car is feeling pretty darn solid, more than I expected, being that it's not really truly an SUV. All right, my friends, rounding it up for these two, I think the biggest takeaway here is that if we're honest, we're really not comparing apples to apples, because the Subaru is one class size up. It's quite a bit larger a car overall, several inches larger in every direction. And the fact of the matter is that the Golf family of cars really is more right in line with the Subaru Impreza. If the Crosstrek were a full wagon and not just a 5-door hatch, that's really what we'd be comparing against the Golf Alltrack. But that said, all of you out there do see these cars in the same light, and buyers out there shopping for wagons are comparing these two cars. There's just that. The other big thing that really sets these cars apart is the Subaru really does have a little bit more off-road capability, and it's not so much the traction and the all-wheel drive system as it is the ground clearance. The Subaru's got a lot more ground clearance, and it's got those higher sidewall tires. Much better if you're out there crawling over rocks and things like that. It's going to protect your wheels. Now conversely, because of these differences, the Golf, well, it handles a lot better. It really has much more of a German driving experience on the road. It does have larger wheels in relation to those tires, so it does have a nice handling presence. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for a ski car? Are you looking for something you're going to spend most of the time on the pavement? Or do you want a vehicle that you can truly go rock crawling with? That's sort of where it's at. You know, if you've got a kayak and you're going way up into the woods on fire roads or something like that, that Subaru might just be your best bet. But if you're going skiing, well, yeah, it might just be the Golf Alltrack. Now, all that in, if I had to choose one of these two, they both made my buy it list. I like them both a lot. I'd probably go with the Volkswagen myself, just because, if I'm honest, I'm a Volkswagen guy. I'm sort of a soft spot person for that brand, and I always have been. I've owned a lot of them, and I really do sort of favor the Alltrack. So there's that. I want to know what you think. Comment down below. If you have any questions I can answer, please go there. The other big thing here is the fact that we've got both test drives for both of these two cars that gets into a lot more detail than what we did here. So click there, watch some more. Either way, I'm glad you came to watch. Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the rides.